My name is Liang Shen. Tonight, I will share a quiet story with you. It is a story many families in Korea tell when they sit around a small campfire. It is passed down gently from one generation to the next. Some say it happened long ago. Others say it still happens when the night is very still. The path grew narrow as evening turned to night. Two travelers moved through the mountain forest quietly. Their names were Hana and Jin. They had been walking since dawn broke. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. Above them, the canopy swayed gently in darkness. They saw a glow between the trees ahead. The light flickered softly, orange and warm. It was small and distant, but unmistakable. A fire burned somewhere beyond the next slope. Hana glanced at Jin, and he nodded silently. They had not expected to find anyone here. This part of the mountain felt forgotten by time. Still, the light drew them forward like a question. They walked toward the glow without speaking much. The forest opened gradually into a wider clearing ahead. Moss covered the ground in thick, soft layers. Stones jutted up in irregular patterns around them. The fire came into full view at last. It burned steadily in a ring of blackened stones. And beside it sat a man, alone and still. He did not look up as they approached quietly. His posture was relaxed, his hands resting on knees. He wore simple clothes, dark and unadorned completely. His face was calm, lit warmly by the flames. Hana and Jin stopped at the clearing's edge. Neither felt afraid, only quietly curious about him. The man smiled gently and raised his head then. "You must be tired," he said in a voice like wool. It was soft, unhurried, as though time meant nothing. Hana blinked, surprised by the warmth in his greeting. Jin shifted his weight but did not step back. The man gestured to the space across the fire. "Please," he said, "sit if you'd like to rest." His eyes reflected firelight but held something else too. Hana looked at Jin and Jin looked at her. Some unspoken agreement passed between them both silently. They moved forward and lowered their packs to ground. The heat of the fire reached them immediately. It felt good against their tired, cold limbs. They sat cross-legged on the soft moss below. The stranger watched them with a patient, knowing expression. For a moment, no one spoke at all. The fire crackled quietly, sending sparks upward into night. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Hana noticed how still everything had become suddenly. No wind moved through the trees above them. No animals called out from the dark beyond. Only the fire made sound, gentle and rhythmic. "You've come a long way today," the man said. His voice did not break the silence harshly. It simply settled into it like stone in water. Hana nodded slowly, though she felt strangely uncertain. How did he know they had traveled far today? Jin seemed to wonder the same thing quietly. The man poked at the fire with a stick. Embers glowed brighter, then faded back to orange glow. "This garden is old," he continued after a pause. "Older than the temple that used to stand here." Hana glanced around, seeing no temple in the darkness. Only moss, stones, and trees surrounded them completely. But something about the space did feel intentional somehow. "A garden?" Jin asked, his voice low and curious. The man nodded, his expression unchanging and serene. "Yes, a place for reflection once upon a time." He gestured loosely to the stones around the fire. These were arranged by hands long gone now. Hana looked at the stones more closely then. They did seem placed, not fallen randomly at all. She traced the outline of one with her eyes. Its surface was smooth, worn by years of weather. Moss clung to one side like a soft blanket. "People came here to think," the man continued gently, "to sit with what had passed and consider it." His words felt heavy, but not with sadness exactly. More like they carried weight that was simply honest. Jin pulled his knees closer to his chest slowly. The warmth of the fire seeped into his bones. He realized how cold he had been before now. "Do people still come here?" he asked the stranger. The man tilted his head slightly, thinking it over. "Some do, not many, but some still find it." He looked at them both with that same calm. "Like you," he added, his smile returning faintly then. Hana felt a strange flutter in her chest briefly. There was something about the way he spoke to them, as if he had known they would arrive tonight, as if this meeting had been written somewhere already. She shook the thought away and watched the flames. They danced in patterns that felt almost deliberate too. The stranger set down his stick beside the fire. He folded his hands together in his lap gently. "You'll remember this night for a long time," he said. His tone was not boastful, only matter-of-fact and clear. Hannah frowned slightly, but not with confusion or suspicion. She felt no alarm, only a deepening sense of curiosity. Jin stared at the man, his face soft and open. "What do you mean?" Hannah asked after a moment passed. The stranger looked at her directly, his eyes kind. "I mean that some nights stay with us longer." He paused, letting the words settle into the air. Not because something grand happens during them necessarily, but because something quiet shifts inside us instead. Hannah nodded slowly, though she didn't fully understand yet. The fire popped softly, and a log shifted inward. Sparks rose in a brief, glittering spiral above them. Hannah watched them disappear into the black sky overhead. She could see a few stars now between branches. They were faint but steady, cold and distant witnesses. The night felt enormous around them, suddenly and vast. Yet the fire made everything feel small and safe. "I've been waiting here for a while," the man said. "Waiting for us?" Jin asked, his voice barely a whisper. The stranger shook his head gently, still smiling faintly. "Not waiting, just here." "And then you arrived." It was a strange answer, both yes and no. Hannah felt her mind try to grasp it fully, but it slipped away like water through her fingers. She decided not to chase the meaning too hard. Instead, she let herself simply sit and be present. The moss beneath her was soft, almost like fabric. Her legs ached pleasantly from the day's long walk. The fire warmed her face and hands and knees. Behind her, the night pressed close but not threatening. It felt more like a blanket than a void. "You're going to meet someone soon," the stranger said. He was looking at Jin now, his gaze steady. Jin blinked, startled by the directness of the statement. "Someone? Who?" he asked, leaning forward a little bit. The man shrugged lightly, as if it didn't quite matter. "Someone who will ask you for directions one morning? You won't know the answer, but you'll walk together." Jin opened his mouth, then closed it again slowly. He didn't know what to say to that at all. The stranger spoke as if describing something that already happened. But Jin had no memory of such an encounter. Still, the words didn't feel like a prediction exactly. They felt more like a memory being handed to him. He sat back, letting the strange feeling wash over. "And you," the man said, turning to Hannah now. She straightened slightly, meeting his eyes without hesitation. "You're going to plan something in the spring ahead." Hannah's breath caught just a little in her chest. "Plan something?" she repeated, her voice soft and uncertain. The stranger nodded, his expression warm and encouraging always. "A tree. Small at first, but it will grow. You'll visit it often over the years that follow. And one day, you'll bring someone else there too. You'll sit in its shade and feel grateful then." Hannah felt the warmth bloom inside her chest suddenly. She didn't understand why the words moved her so, but they did, deeply, like a promise she recognized. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment longer. The fire crackled again, filling the silence between them. The stranger did not push for a response from either. He simply gazed into the flames with quiet contentment. Hannah noticed how his face seemed ageless in firelight. He could have been 30 or 60 or anywhere between. His hands were smooth, his posture neither young nor old. He simply was, existing without the burden of time. Jin finally spoke, his voice tentative but genuinely curious. "How do you know these things about us exactly?" The stranger smiled, not with smugness but with gentleness. "I don't know them the way you might think." He paused, searching for the right words to explain. "I see them the way you might see a path, not because you've walked it, but because it's there." The answer should have frustrated Jin, but it didn't. Instead, he felt a strange sense of peace settle. He looked at Hannah, and she looked back calmly. Her face was soft in the firelight, thoughtful and open. She didn't seem troubled by the stranger's words either. If anything, she seemed more relaxed than before now. Jin let himself relax too, releasing the need to understand. The stranger reached into a small bag beside him. He pulled out a simple clay cup, unglazed and rough, then another and another, until there were 3 total. He set them on the stones near the fire carefully. From the same bag, he produced a small metal pot. It was dented and old, blackened by many fires. He filled it with water from a leather canteen. He placed the pot at the edge of flames gently. No one spoke as they watched him work quietly. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial in nature, but not in a formal way, more like deep habit. Hana felt her eyelids grow heavier as she watched. The rhythm of his actions was soothing, hypnotic even. Jin yawned quietly, covering his mouth with his hand. The water in the pot began to steam slowly. The stranger added something from a small cloth pouch. Hana caught the scent of herbs, earthy and faintly sweet. It mixed with the smoke from the fire below. The combination was comforting, grounding, and deeply calming overall. She breathed it in deeply, feeling her shoulders drop. The tension she'd carried all day melted away completely. The stranger poured the tea into each cup carefully. He handed one to Hana, one to Jin with care. Then he took the third for himself and sat back. The cup was warm in Hana's hands, almost hot. She brought it close to her face and inhaled. The steam curled upward, carrying that same earthy sweetness. She sipped slowly, and the warmth spread through her. Jin drank too, his eyes closing briefly in appreciation. The tea tasted like the forest smelled, green and alive. There was something else in it, subtle and unnameable. It made him think of rain on stones somehow. The stranger sipped his own tea without speaking still. The 3 of them sat together in companionable silence. The fire continued its quiet work, burning steadily onward. "There will be a morning," the stranger said eventually. His voice was even softer now, almost like a lullaby. "Not soon, but someday. You wake up early." He was looking at both of them, his gaze distant. "The light will be pale, just before the sun, and you'll feel something you can't name at first. But it will feel important, like a door opening." Hana set her cup down on a flat stone gently. She listened, her whole body relaxed and receptive now. "You will go outside," the stranger continued with his story. "Maybe to a garden, or a balcony, or window, and you'll see the world waking up around you. And you'll realize something you'd forgotten about yourself." His words hung in the air like mist over water. Jin felt his chest tighten, not with fear, but recognition. He didn't know what the stranger was describing exactly, but it felt true, like a memory waiting to happen. "What will realize?" he asked, his voice barely there. The stranger shook his head slowly, still smiling that smile. "That's not for me to say out loud now. You'll know it when it comes to you then." Hana put her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. She rested her chin there, gazing into the fire. She felt safe here, safer than she'd felt anywhere recently. The stranger's presence was odd, but not unsettling at all. If anything, he felt like an old friend somehow. Someone she'd known once and simply forgotten about entirely. Jin seemed to feel the same way beside her. "Do you live here?" Hana asked after some time passed. The stranger considered the question, tilting his head slightly. "I stay here sometimes," he said at last carefully. "When people need a place to rest at night, or when the fire needs someone to tend it." It was another answer that wasn't quite an answer. But Hana found she didn't mind that at all. The night deepened around them as minutes slipped by. Hana wasn't sure how long they'd been sitting there. Time felt different here, stretched and soft like taffy. She glanced at Jin and saw his eyes half closed. He looked peaceful, his face smooth and untroubled entirely. The firelight played across his features in warm waves. She felt her own eyelids growing heavier with each blink. "You can sleep if you'd like," the stranger offered gently. "The fire will stay warm through the night ahead. You're safe here. Nothing will disturb your rest tonight." His words felt like a promise, solid and unbreakable somehow. Hana wanted to protest, to stay awake and listen, but her body was already surrendering to the exhaustion. Jin was nodding off beside her, his breathing deepening slowly. She let herself lie down on the soft moss. It cradled her body like the gentlest bed imaginable. She could still feel the fire's warmth on her face. The stranger remained sitting, watching the flames dance quietly. "Will you be here in the morning?" she murmured. Her voice was thick with sleep, barely coherent now. She didn't hear his answer before darkness took her. Jin had already drifted off, his chest rising and falling. The stranger looked at them both with a tender expression. He added another log to the fire with care. Sparks rose and vanished into the night sky above. The forest around them seemed to exhale in unison. Leaves rustled once, then fell still again completely. The stranger began to speak, though no one heard him. "You'll forget most of this," he said to sleeping travelers, "but something will stay, a feeling, a warmth inside. You'll think of it on hard days ahead sometimes, and it will help you, even if you don't remember why." His voice was barely a whisper, blending with the fire. "You'll be kind to someone because of tonight here, and they'll be kind to someone else in turn later." He poured himself more tea and sipped it slowly. The hours passed, but he did not move much. Occasionally, he adjusted the fire, keeping it fed and alive. He watched the stars wheel overhead in their ancient paths. The moon rose, thin and pale, casting silver light down. It mixed with the firelight, creating two kinds of glow. The travelers slept deeply, their dreams gentle and untroubled. At some point, the stranger began to hum quietly. It was not quite a song, more like a melody without words. It wove through the crackling of the fire below. It drifted up into the branches of the trees above. It settled over the sleeping forms like a soft blanket. In her sleep, Hannah smiled just a little bit. Jin's breathing grew even slower, deeper, more restful still. The stranger's humming eventually faded into silence again. He sat with his hands folded, his eyes half closed peacefully. He looked as though he might be sleeping himself. But there was an awareness in his stillness that suggested otherwise. He was simply present, fully and completely in this moment. Not thinking of past or future, only the now. The fire reflected in his dark, knowing eyes steadily. Dawn was still hours away when he finally stood. His movements were slow, careful not to wake them. He added one more log to the fire first. It would burn long enough to warm their morning. Then he gathered his small bag and slung it over his shoulder. He looked at Hannah and Jin one last time. His expression was fond, almost paternal in its gentleness. He walked to the edge of the clearing quietly. The forest seemed to part for him without sound. He paused, turning back to look at the fire. It burned steadily, a beacon in the mountain darkness. He nodded once, as if satisfied with something unseen. Then he stepped into the trees and was gone. Not suddenly, but gradually, like mist evaporating in sunlight. The fire continued to burn through the remaining night. The clearing remained peaceful, undisturbed by any presence except theirs. Stars faded slowly as the sky began to pale. Birds began to call from somewhere deep in the forest. Their songs were hesitant at first, then grew more confident. Hannah stirred as the first light touched her face. She blinked slowly, confused about where she was briefly. Then she remembered. The fire, the stranger, the tea he'd served. She sat up quickly, looking around the clearing now. Jin was still asleep beside her, curled on his side. The fire still burned, smaller now, but still very much alive. But the stranger was gone, nowhere to be seen. Hannah looked for signs of where he might have gone, but the moss showed no footprints, no trace at all. She stood slowly, her body stiff from sleeping outside, but she felt rested, more rested than she'd felt in weeks. The air was cool and fresh, carrying morning's clean scent. She walked around the clearing, searching for any clue really. The 3 cups still sat by the fire's edge, but there was no bag, no pot, no sign of him. Only the fire, the stones, and the ancient garden remained. Jin woke a few minutes later, yawning and stretching. He looked around with the same confusion Hannah had felt. "Where did he go?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. Hannah shook her head slowly, still looking around them. "I don't know. He's just gone completely now." They stood together, staring at the fire in silence. It felt like waking from a dream they'd shared. But it had been real. The fire proved that much, and the warmth they felt inside proved it too. Hannah touched her chest, feeling something different there now. Not new exactly, but awakened, like a sleeping seed. Jin felt it too, though he couldn't name it. They packed their things slowly, not speaking much at all. The garden watched them go with the same quiet patience. They walked away from the garden as morning light grew stronger. The path beneath their feet was soft with fallen pine needles. Neither Hannah nor Jin spoke for a long time. The silence between them felt full, not empty at all. Something had shifted inside both of them during the night. It was gentle, like a door opening onto a quiet room. The forest around them seemed to glow from the inside. Hannah noticed how the light fell through the branches overhead. It came down in long, golden shafts that moved slowly. Dust floated in those beams, drifting without hurry or direction. Now we will rest here with them for a while. Now we will let the story fade into simple breathing. Let the images soften and blur at their edges gently. Let the characters become part of the forest around them. Let yourself become part of the forest too if you wish.